Some people believe they're entitled to your time, your energy, your peace, as if you're some kind of emotional vending machine they can punch whenever they're having a bad day. They treat your boundaries like suggestions, something flexible, négociable, or worse, irrelevant. But here's the quiet, brutal truth. Most people don't even realize how much damage they've absorbed until it's already too late, until they're drained, living in survival mode, emotionally hollow after every interaction. And often, the ones crossing those lines are the ones closest to you. In this video, we're going to expose 5 specific behaviors that you should never tolerate from anyone, not your partner, not your boss, and not even your family, because the cost of allowing them is your peace, and you can't afford to keep paying that price. Manipulation and gaslighting. Of all the behaviors that erode your peace, this one is the most deceptive, the most insidious, and the most dangerous, because unlike open disrespect, unlike loud conflict, gaslighting doesn't attack you head-on. It creeps in through the cracks. It starts small contradictions here and there, slight revisions of past conversations. Phrases like, "You're overreacting," or "You're imagining things." And at first, you try to explain. You want clarity. You want to be understood. But what you don't realize is that you're already being pulled into the trap, because the manipulator doesn't want understanding. They want control. They twist your words. They question your memory. They plant seeds of doubt, not just in your actions, but in your perception of reality itself. And slowly, methodically, they get what they want: your silence, your confusion, your dependence. You stop trusting yourself. You start looking to them for the truth. And that, right there, is the point where you begin to lose the most important battle of all, the battle to protect your own mind. From a Stoic perspective, this is a direct attack on your ability to reason, to see clearly, and to govern your thoughts with discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If your thoughts have been hijacked, if your confidence has been replaced with self-doubt, your clarity with confusion, your strength with second-guessing, then you are no longer living freely. You are being ruled from the inside by someone else's narrative. The Stoics taught us that peace comes not from the absence of pain, but from the presence of truth. And in the face of gaslighting, truth becomes your sharpest weapon. But not the truth you argue with, the truth you hold firm in silence, the truth you reclaim through awareness, the truth you document not for them, but for you. When someone gaslights you, they're not just lying to you. They are trying to reprogram you, to make you doubt your instincts, to weaken your defense system so that their influence becomes your new compass. That is not love. That is warfare, psychological warfare. And the man who refuses to see this will find himself slowly unraveling, not in one loud moment, but in the 1,000 quiet concessions he makes just to keep the peace. You cannot argue your way out of manipulation. The more you try, the more fuel you give them. What you must do is step into awareness, start writing things down, track their words, compare them with reality. Speak with someone who has no stake in their lies, someone who can reflect back to you the truth that you've been trained to question. And when the fog begins to lift, when you begin to see the game clearly, you must act, not with drama, not with confrontation, with distance, with boundaries. with silence. The Stoic doesn't seek to destroy the enemy, he seeks to reclaim his mind. Because once you return to clarity, their words lose their grip. Their manipulation loses its anchor. You stop responding to their accusations. You stop explaining your every move. You stop offering them access to the most sacred part of your being, your inner judgment. And this is where your power returns. Not in shouting, not in retaliation, but in the quiet, immovable conviction that you no longer need their permission to feel what you feel. Remember what you remember, or know what you know. Gaslighting is not just emotional abuse. It is a theft of perception, and you must become the guardian of your own mind. Because if you don't, someone else will write your story for you, and they will never write it in your favor. The Stoic man understands that his first duty is to protect his reason, and when reason is under siege, withdrawal is not cowardice. It is strategy. Clarity is your shield. Truth is your sword. And silence, when held with strength, is your most unshakable defense. This is how you reclaim your mind. This is how you defend your peace. This is how you rise above the fog of manipulation, strong, steady, and fully in command of your own life again. Constant criticism. It is one of the most underestimated forms of emotional harm, not because it shouts, but because it whispers. It wears no armor, carries no weapon, and yet, over time, it breaks people down. It enters your life through people you trust, people who claim to care, who say they only want what's best for you. But their words don't lift. They press. They don't clarify. They cloud. What begins as a stray comment about your appearance becomes a steady attack on your ideas, your voice, your decisions, your dreams. You begin to notice a pattern, one where nothing you do is quite good enough, one where praise is rare, and judgment is the default. And slowly, silently, your confidence begins to erode. You find yourself hesitating before speaking, filtering every thought, anticipating disapproval before you've even acted. You become quieter, not from peace, but from pressure. This is not constructive criticism. This is control disguised as concern. And it is a form of psychological warfare aimed not at your behavior, but at your being. The Stoics warned of this in their own way. They spoke of preserving the inner citadel, the stronghold of your mind, your will, your reason. When that fortress is compromised, not by physical force, but by emotional manipulation, you lose the very thing that allows you to live with dignity, your sense of inner clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. But what happens when those thoughts are no longer yours? What happens when the voice in your head sounds suspiciously like the person who never believed in you? That is the cost of tolerating constant criticism. You stop recognizing your own voice. You stop trusting your own judgment. You become a version of yourself that's always seeking permission, always apologizing, always shrinking. That is not humility. That is emotional captivity. This behavior often hides behind family roles, parents calling it tough love, siblings calling it just being honest, partners framing it as helping you grow. But growth never comes from shame, and love does not speak in daggers. A person who truly wants to see you evolve will speak truth with gentleness, not with cruelty. They will correct with care, not with sarcasm. When criticism becomes a daily ritual, when it replaces encouragement, when it leaves you feeling smaller, heavier, more doubtful. It has become toxic, and no amount of blood ties, shared history, or emotional debt gives anyone the right to tear down your spirit. So how do you respond? Not with equal cruelty, not with retaliation. You respond with calm, deliberate action. You acknowledge the pattern. You name it, not for their sake, but for your own clarity. You say to yourself, this is not normal. This is not love. This is not mine to carry. You stop engaging in endless conversations where you try to prove your worth. You stop defending your every move to someone who has already decided you are not enough. And most of all, you draw the line, not with rage, but with resolve. You don't explain your boundary. You embody it. The Stoic warrior does not seek battles, but he never flees from them either. He knows that silence can be sacred, and that sometimes stepping back is the most powerful statement of all. When someone continues to offer criticism that wounds, rather than guidance that strengthens, they forfeit the right to influence your path. You reclaim your peace by refusing to make their voice louder than your own. This is not selfish. This is not unkind. This is self-mastery. And it is how you begin the lifelong practice of refusing to shrink for those who never learned how to grow. Chronic dishonesty. Few things are more destabilizing to the human spirit than being repeatedly lied to by someone you trusted. Not because every lie is massive or malicious on its own, but because each one plants a seed of doubt, a quiet, growing unease that eventually spreads into every corner of the relationship. Dishonesty is not just about the spoken falsehoods. It's also the silence when the truth should be spoken. It's the half-answers, the shifting timelines, the selective memory, the broken promises that are dressed up as misunderstandings. And the danger of chronic dishonesty is that it doesn't just make you question them, it makes you question yourself. You start wondering if you're too rigid, too demanding, too unforgiving. You second-guess your instincts. You try to fill in the blanks they've left with your own reasoning, hoping to make it make sense. But what you're doing is patching up a leaking ship with trust you can no longer afford to give. The Stoics were absolute in their stance on truth. To live in harmony with nature, with reason, with yourself requires that you deal in what is real, not what is convenient. Seneca wrote that the first step toward wisdom is honesty, not just with others, but with yourself. A man who lies is not just hiding something from you. He is creating an alternate reality in which he gets to control what you know, how you feel, and how you respond. That is not care. That is control. And over time, you are not just losing clarity, you are surrendering autonomy. You are letting someone else define what is true, while your own sense of reality fades into confusion. Chronic dishonesty is especially destructive because it wears a mask. It can come from someone who smiles at you, who hugs you, who tells you they love you, even as they look you in the eyes and conceal what matters. And when you finally catch the pattern, you're not just hurt, you're shaken, because now the past is tainted. What else wasn't real? What else was edited, twisted, withheld? That's what dishonesty does. It doesn't just damage the present, it rewrites the past and poisons the future. The Stoic does not ignore this. He confronts it not by trying to change the liar, but by choosing what he will allow into his inner world. Dishonesty, when it becomes habitual, is a form of emotional theft. It robs you of stability, It robs you of peace. It forces you to live in a state of vigilance, where trust is replaced with suspicion and conversations become calculations. That is no way to live. That is not peace. That is survival. So what is the response of a disciplined, clear-minded man? It is not to beg for the truth. It is not to rage at every lie. It is to observe, with quiet precision, to compare words with actions, promises with results, to see if the behavior ever truly changes or if the apologies are just a delay tactic for the next round of deception. And once you see the pattern clearly, you act, you withdraw, you protect. You stop giving chances to someone who sees your forgiveness as a weakness to be exploited. You stop explaining why honesty matters, because if they don't know that already, they are not ready to stand beside you. From a Stoic standpoint, the lie is not just a moral failure, it is a strategic threat. It is noise in the system, distortion in the signal, and it must be removed. You preserve your peace by surrounding yourself with those who tell the truth not perfectly, but consistently, because honesty is not about perfection, it's about alignment. When someone's words and actions match again and again, you know you are dealing with someone worthy of trust. And when they don't, no matter how close they are, no matter how long they've been in your life, you must be willing to let them go. Your inner world must be guarded like a fortress. If lies are allowed to enter freely, they will rot the foundation. They will create cracks in your clarity and slowly undo your strength. So you stand at the gate of your life with vigilance. You listen with discernment. You speak with integrity. And you surround yourself with those who do the same. Because peace is not just something you find, it's something you protect. And no one who repeatedly chooses deception should be allowed to take another step across your boundary. That is not anger. That is order. That is not punishment. That is preservation. And that is what a Stoic man must practice, not just occasionally, but every single day. Boundary violations. These are the quiet invasions that erode your peace without making a sound. They don't always come through violence, argument, or open disrespect. Sometimes they wear the face of familiarity, arriving as a sibling who walks into your home without knocking. A friend who assumes your time is always available. A partner who brushes past your silence as if it means nothing. These violations are not always physical. Often, they are emotional, psychological, or spiritual. The person who dismisses your need for space, the relative who brings up painful subjects in front of others, the co-worker who overshares, then pressures you to do the same. Each one may seem small on its own, but together they build a pattern where your needs become optional, your voice becomes background noise, and your discomfort is treated as an inconvenience. What makes boundary violations so dangerous is their subtlety. They are easy to rationalize, especially when they come from those you care about. You tell yourself they didn't mean it. You tell yourself it's just how they are. But meaning well does not give someone the right to ignore your limits. Good intentions do not justify repeated intrusions. From a Stoic perspective, this is not just a social problem, it's a spiritual one. The Stoics believed in self-governance. That means knowing what belongs to you, your time, your space, your energy, and guarding it with clarity and discipline. When someone crosses a line you've drawn, and you allow it, you are not keeping the peace. You are abandoning yourself. Every time you ignore a violation, you send a silent message that your comfort, your boundaries, your well-being are flexible, and over time, people treat them that way, pushing further, testing more, until you no longer feel safe in your own life. Stoicism doesn't call for retaliation. It calls for precision. The Stoic man doesn't need to argue to be firm. He doesn't need to shout to be heard. When a boundary is crossed, he does not explain it repeatedly to someone who refuses to listen. He makes a decision with calm, with finality. He defines what is acceptable and what is not. He enforces it not with emotion, but with action. This might mean ending a conversation, leaving a room, refusing to engage in familiar patterns of disrespect, or in some cases, cutting ties altogether. And yes, that includes family. Blood may connect you, but it does not entitle anyone to access the deepest parts of you. If someone constantly undermines your peace, your boundaries, your dignity, then closeness without respect is not love, it's possession. And the longer you tolerate it, the harder it becomes to remember who you were before their presence trained you to feel guilty for simply protecting yourself. Boundaries are not cruelty. They are clarity. They are not punishments. They are policies for self-respect, and when enforced with calm consistency, they become the invisible armor that shields your mind from unnecessary chaos. The Stoics taught us that we cannot control others, but we can control what we permit, what we allow, and what we step away from. So if someone mocks your boundaries, guilt trips you for asserting them, or accuses you of being cold or selfish, let them speak. Let them protest. But do not move your line. You are not obligated to explain your right to peace. You are not responsible for managing the emotions of those who disrespect your limits. And you are certainly not required to make yourself smaller for someone who only understands love when it gives them unrestricted access to you. To live with strength is to live with structure. To live with peace is to guard your perimeter. That doesn't mean you build walls that keep everyone out. It means you open doors to those who knock with respect, and you close them to those who barge in entitled. Your boundaries are not burdens. They are the gatekeepers of your future. And the man who does not protect his peace will always be ruled by those who seek to disrupt it. Disrespect, disguised as humor. This is the subtle poison that seeps into relationships under the mask of playfulness. It doesn't arrive with fists or threats. It arrives with a smirk, a chuckle, a so-called joke that leaves you feeling small while everyone else laughs. You hear it in the backhanded compliments, the mocking tone, the sarcastic remarks said just loud enough for others to hear. And when you finally feel the sting and speak up, the response is predictable. They laugh louder. They call you too sensitive. They tell you to lighten up. They say, "Relax. I was just joking." As if that phrase alone gives them permission to wound you without consequence. But it's not a joke if the punchline always lands on you. It's not honesty if it leaves you humiliated. And it's not love if the person delivering the insult refuses to take responsibility for how their words make you feel. Over time, this kind of behavior wears you down. You begin to anticipate the next jab. You edit yourself in conversations. You avoid being vulnerable, because somewhere deep inside, you've learned that anything you share can and will be used as ammunition. And that's exactly the problem. What should be a safe connection becomes a battlefield, where your dignity is constantly on the line. From a Stoic point of view, this is not acceptable. Marcus Aurelius taught that words should heal, not harm. That true strength is not expressed through domination or mockery, but through measured, deliberate speech that uplifts, clarifies, and respects the soul of another. The Stoic man is not thin-skinned, but he is not blind either. He knows the difference between banter and bullying, between laughter that builds camaraderie and laughter that enforces a hierarchy, one where someone else always gets to be the one on top, and you are expected to play along at your own expense. And make no mistake, this behavior is often strategic. It's a way for insecure people to assert control, to lower your standing while pretending it's all in good fun. It's social manipulation, using humor as a shield, and your politeness as a weapon against you. But the Stoic refuses to play that game. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't match insult with insult. He doesn't waste time explaining why he's offended. He simply sees the truth and acts accordingly. When someone uses humor to mock your values, your appearance, your experiences, your pain, they are revealing something about themselves. And when you continue to tolerate it, you are making a statement about yourself as well. That ends now. The response is simple. You stop laughing at what hurts. You stop making excuses for people who use your discomfort for entertainment. You say clearly, "That was not respectful," and you leave the silence to do the rest. If they change, you've shown them the boundary. If they double down, you have your answer. And either way, you take back control of your peace. Because boundaries are not just for physical space, they exist in conversation, in tone, in energy. And the man who guards his dignity does not apologize for drawing those lines. He does not explain them to people who already know they crossed them. He lets his silence speak. He lets his distance protect. And he lets his presence become a space where disrespect is simply not allowed to exist. So, if someone calls you weak for not laughing along, let them. If someone says you're cold for withdrawing, so be it. Let their discomfort grow in the space your silence creates. Because your soul is not a stage. Your wounds are not a source of comedy. Your presence is not a playground for anyone's ego. And the man who knows his worth does not entertain those who think cruelty is connection. He walks away, not in rage, not in bitterness, but with the calm power of someone who understands that real strength lies in what you refuse to accept. And when humor is used as a knife, the Stoic response is not to fight, but to remove yourself from the table entirely. Not every joke deserves your presence. Not every relationship deserves your silence. And not every insult disguised as honesty deserves a seat at your table. That is not coldness. That is clarity. That is not weakness. That is command. And that is how you ensure your peace is never again the price of someone else's amusement. You've just seen 5 behaviors that destroy your peace. Constant criticism, boundary violations, manipulation and gaslighting, chronic dishonesty, and disrespect disguised as humor. These are not harmless quirks. They are warning signs, strategic, repeated attacks on your dignity, your clarity, and your strength. And now that you've named them, the real work begins not in confronting every offender, but in confronting yourself. Will you continue to justify what you know is harmful? Will you keep making space for those who drain you? Or will you start choosing yourself quietly, steadily, without guilt? The Stoic path does not demand rage or revenge. It demands resolve. It demands awareness. And it demands action. You were not made to endure pain as proof of love. You were not born to be the emotional outlet for someone else's chaos. Your peace is not negotiable. Your clarity is not a favor to be earned, and your dignity is not a gift to be given away. You protect it through silence, through standards, and through the steady discipline of walking away from what no longer serves your highest self. This is not a call to isolation, it is a call to self-respect. The people who deserve a place in your life will never require you to lower your boundaries, abandon your values, or laugh at your own pain, just to stay close. So step back from the noise, tune out the voices that disguise harm as love, and return to your center calm, alert, grounded, because peace is not something others give you. It is something you build, brick by brick, boundary by boundary, choice by choice. And today, that building begins again with you.